Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is our Raw Reaction show. Joining you the morning after Arsenal's 2-0 defeat at home against West Ham United in the Premier League. Thank you, as always, so much for tuning. That's the word I want. Tuning in today, especially considering it is not the happiest of mornings by any stretch of the imagination. And I thank you for your continued support. It's what football's about. It's the rough through the smooth. And I hope that you turn up for every result that we have, even though some are more challenging than another. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Boss, Dave, good morning to you, to Black Shine, to Martin Arasilki. We've got Sabre, we've got Damien. We've got Glenn, we've got Rob, we've got Dave. Thank you guys for tuning in. Stevie, Katana, Franklin, Mike. We've got Red Star and Cliff. We've got James. We've got John. Thank you, everyone, for listening in, and everybody else as well. It is very much appreciated. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the usual show, as per, talking through the key points in part one before taking some of your questions in part two. So please make sure you stick around for that if you want to get your comments heard in the second part. We did actually do a bit of an experiment last night, a full-time phone-in show. It's something that we might see more of next year. So if you haven't already given that a watch or listened back, we had a variety of callers tune in to give their thoughts on the game. And so, yeah, it was a really good and interesting show. So I look forward maybe to doing more of these if indeed the opportunity comes up. However, in what was, I think, probably easy to say at this point, the worst performance of the season, Arsenal lost 2-0 at home to West Ham United in what is a massive, massive blow to the club's title hopes. It isn't a killing blow by any stretch of the imagination, and don't let the hyperbolic characters that are out there tell you any differently. But it is a massive blow to Arsenal's title hopes, that is for sure, as Liverpool now lead the way, and Manchester City can, of course, go above Arsenal with their game in hand with a better goal difference that they have right now. It kind of shows you how many points have been dropped by all the teams, considering that Man City can go above us on goal difference, despite the fact they've won just 2 of their last 7 Premier League games, which shows you how far they could be ahead and perhaps provide some context as well to the season that we have had so far. I want to get this bit out of the way quickly, because obviously I don't want to be labelled as trying to blame VAR or refereeing decisions as to why we lost. So I think there are a lot of reasons as to why we lost, and this is a factor in that, but it's not. I'm not going to use it as an excuse, and so I want to address the refereeing decisions first and swiftly. So you can see on your screen here, and if obviously you are listening on catch up, I recommend watching or listening to this while you can see my Twitter feed, because I have a small in-depth kind of look at the thread of the decisions, which you can have a look at the Gooner Talk TV if you would like to see that small thread. The 3 frames that you can see are the 3 frames that we got access to. In frame 1 at the top of the screen, you can see the ball ever so slightly crossing the line. In frame 2, which for me is the key frame, you see the ball disappear out of sight. But what you can see, and we'll see in the next slide in a second, a zoomed in image, you can see the very small gap presented by a thin black line between Jarrod Bowen's right thigh and the post. The 3rd frame is even more telling, because this speeds things on again by another frame. The ball still out of sight, traveling away from the line, and then we get the ball coming into frame between Jarrod Bowen's right and left leg. Now, if we go to the 2nd frame, you can see that black line like I was talking about there. And not only that, but you get a 2nd angle, which wasn't actually shown for more than a couple of seconds in the VAR analysis. I think that image that you can see on the right hand side of the screen is even more telling. I think it's further out of play than the Joe Willock incident was. I agree with Thierry Henry. We have all this technology, and why there can't be a overhead camera, I don't know. Why there isn't an overhead camera at all, or why there isn't a chip in the ball that will tell the referee when the ball has indeed gone out of play. It was very frustrating. And then the other VAR incidents. The Saka penalty claim, I don't think it's a penalty. I think Saka is looking for it. And I think in another situation, if Saka goes more towards the player of the starting run, it could be a penalty. But for me, the Saka penalty is not a penalty. What I think is a penalty is Souček's challenge on Gabriel Jesus. Gabriel Jesus dummies the ball. Souček slides into the player, takes him out. It's just a foul. It's just a penalty. Very clearly and very obviously is a penalty. I won't have this. Oh, the ball's gone. Oh, Martinelli takes the shot. It's a late tackle. The ball has gone miles away. And Souček just slides straight into Jesus. It's a penalty. It just is. There is not a debate there at all. So that's the VAR stuff. You probably won't hear me bring this up again, other than if I'm asked about it in part 2. So that's the frustrating part out of the way, I guess. Now, for me, no, I'm losing my voice already. That's good. 5 minutes into the show. Our best player on the day was Martin Odegaard, and still I didn't think he had a good enough game on the day, but he was the clear standout performer for Arsenal on the day, with his touches, his moves, his turns, his passing, the way in which he just continually tried and tried and tried. The criticism I have of Odegaard is that sometimes he didn't release the ball soon enough. I wanted to see some of those crosses get in a bit earlier. I think he could have gambled a bit more, but my goodness me, the chances that he was creating, the shots he was having to take, he was trying to take this game and win it on his own at times, which maybe went too far, because he could have, as I mentioned, released the ball a little bit earlier. But I think that it was more of a performance from a player that when Arsenal, especially from Odegaard, because there are times where if we're not playing particularly well, it's usually because Odegaard's not playing particularly well and he's usually out of the game. And some people call him a luxury player. I think that's incredibly harsh. But yeah, I think Odegaard's performance was the only thing I could really latch on to, as well as Saliba. I think Saliba had a good game. But beyond that, yeah, it was really difficult to look beyond that, because Declan Rice had his worst performance of the season. I haven't actually got a slide on Declan Rice, but I suppose I could have done. It was notably his worst game of the season. Maybe there was something to do with the narrative affecting him in this game. I don't know. But yeah, that was certainly something to consider. Gabriel Martinelli, I think we can all agree, is in his worst patch of form. He has 2 fantastic shooting opportunities and misses both of them. The first one, of course, on the left-hand side. The second one is when that Gabriel Jesus challenge is made and the Souček penalty call is made. He has to score that chance. As soon as the ball cut, I mean, at minimum, he has to get the ball on target. It was and has been a really poor run of form for Gabriel Martinelli. And the problem is that the other option, of course, is Leandro Trossard, who had an equally poor game, maybe slightly better. I thought Martinelli was probably our worst player on the day. He absolutely was without doubt, a worse player on the pitch for me. And we just don't seem to have the options. Nelson came on, didn't change things. I want to see more from Nelson. And I think that shows if there's an offer in January, 15, 20 million pounds, we need to move Nelson on and bring somebody else in, because we just need to have somebody better. We need to have more. We'll talk about transfers in a little bit. Gabriel Jesus simply has to score this chance, and I don't quite know how he's managed to get his head so far underneath it. I guess his lack of height maybe is the answer to this one. We have 10 Premier League goals between our front 3. Saka, Jesus, and Martinelli have 3 Premier League goals, but have 10, Premier League goals between them. That is nowhere near the level of a team that needs to win a title. And yes, we need to address things that went wrong last season. And one of that was, of course, the amount of goals that we conceded, and we needed to be better defensively. But whilst we have addressed that to some degree, and whilst we are more resilient, and whilst we are harder to beat, although yesterday certainly wouldn't be an example of that, we have sacrificed, it seems, quite a lot. But I'm struggling to know why. I'm struggling to understand why a team that scored 88 Premier League goals last season, where Odegaard got 15, Saka got, I think, 15 plus, Jesus got 11, Martinelli got way more than 10 as well, that now halfway through the season, they have 10 Premier League goals. For the record, Dominic Solanke has 12. It was brought up on our phone-in show yesterday by one of our fantastic callers. Dominic Solanke has more Premier League goals than our front three combined this season. For me, Saka's way too far out wide. Saka needs to get far more closer to the box. I'd like to see him in. I think Saka is one of our best finishers, and he's not in the box enough for me. He was far too pushed out into the wide areas. I would have liked. Now I've watched the game and back and moments of the game back again. I just feel as though whenever we pass the ball out to Saka, his job is he's got to beat 1, 2, 3 players before we get a shot on goal. I think he needs to be in the box more. Is the exit NSW says Xhaka was the glue? Is the loss of Granit Xhaka the reason for why we are this different? I can't think that it can be that significant. The loss of Xhaka is the difference between this front three scoring as fewer goals as it is. I think it has to come in some ways with how opposition teams are playing against us. Opposition teams were more open against us last season, and this season they're certainly being a lot more reserved, and they're making it a lot harder for us to score goals. I think that is certainly the context. And then we have to talk about the solutions. What is the solution to this problem? I know that I can hear people screaming, Ivan Toney scores this chance. And maybe Ivan Toney does score this chance, but we're not going to spend £100 million on him in January. So that's not going to solve it. So how do we solve it with what we've got and with maybe realistic signings in January? Zinchenko had another bad night. I don't want to scapegoat the guy, and I think there was a danger of that happening yesterday. But again, he was poor. And the question mark is that we haven't really got another option. I know Kivior, people say we should start Kivior, but let's be honest, Kivior isn't going to offer, if we're struggling offensively, Kivior's not going to offer more than Zinchenko does going forwards. The problem is obviously the mistakes that Zinchenko is making defensively, and in a possession-based side, that is a problem. But I don't think Kivior is going to change that too much. And Mohamed Kudus, I thought, was fantastic. This is kind of this is the antithesis of Arsenal fans. Bad? That is an understatement. It's like you get complained about for saying something accurate, but I know what you mean. He was bad. And there's no other really word for it. It was dreadful. It was a really poor performance from Zinchenko again. We missed Tomiyasu, we missed Timber, we missed the players that we signed in the summer to help this situation improve. We missed that extra. Arteta clearly knew by starting Timber at left back in the first game of the season that his future as Arsenal manager does not maybe have Zinchenko as his left back. So those suggesting that this is on Arteta, I'm sorry, but Arteta has tried to address this. He's tried to address this by spending the money in the summer, bringing in a player that he thinks can take on that position to another level in Timber, and used him there in the first Premier League game of the season. And sadly, he's now injured for the long term, and that might prove a really detrimental factor in our hopes of what we want to do this season. No one will remember this Raya penalty save, and that's a shame. If we are a 2-2 or 3-2 and there's penalties in the final moments, David Raya will be talking about as the hero of the day saving a penalty. And we don't get to see too many penalties saved at Arsenal. When you're looking at the number of penalties Arsenal goalkeepers have saved down the years in the last decade, you're in single digits from open play. Comfortably, I think, in single digits. So David Raya, the header from Mavropanos is excellent. He's obviously unable to get to the Souček effort, so I'm not really looking at him for the 2 goals. You have to give David Raya credit for the penalty save. It is an excellent save and gives me a little bit more confidence when it comes to him being in net for penalty situations. So that is certainly a positive, if ever so much a slight one. So why didn't we win this game? 77 touches in the penalty box, 30 chances created that led to shots, and no goals. And I think that's the reason. I don't look at Arteta particularly. If I was to be critical of Arteta, it would be that he didn't gamble with substitutions enough. He didn't bring on Smith Rowe early enough. He didn't bring off Trossard or Martinelli early enough. But beyond that, I can't expect Arteta to run onto the field and kick the ball in the back of the net. We created 30 shooting opportunities. We had 77 touches in the box, and we couldn't finish our chances. Where I do disagree with Arteta is in his post-match analysis when he was asked about the number of chances that his Arsenal team created. Now, he may have been stopping short of criticising his team. He may have been stopping short of criticising the finishing of his players. But when he was asked about our missed chances, he says, it's what it is. We have to try to generate. If we don't score in 30 shots, we have to do 50 or 60 to try to score. It's the only thing I cannot imagine a game that you have more dominance, more touches in the box, less situation of the opponents against a really good West Ham side. But today wasn't enough to win the game. I don't agree with him. It is not the only thing, as he says. And maybe, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here, maybe he's saying that just to defend his players in public, and behind the scenes, maybe he's being more critical. Maybe. But it is not the only thing. Because what he should, in my opinion, be saying is that we need to be better with our finishing. Our players need to be better when they take those opportunities. Martinelli has to score. Jesus has to score. You know, Saka has to do better with his chance that hits the post. We have to be better. You don't create that many chances and not score and then say, well, we need to create more chances. I genuinely think Arsenal could have had another 30 shots and we wouldn't have scored. It just didn't ever feel like we were creating, or not ever creating a chance to score from, because we did. It just never felt like we were going to score. It never felt like those players were going to have the finishing ability to finish off the chances that we were creating. And so we have to ask the question, then how do we change that? What is the problem? I think we missed Kai Havertz yesterday. I think Kai Havertz in those situations, we would have had a better target. And this is where I disagree with people saying that we need to sign a striker just because they're tall. We have an option like that. We have Kai. We missed him today because he was suspended, but we missed Kai Havertz. We missed that option. We missed that variation. Fans have been crying out for a plan B for years and years and years at Arsenal. We have one. He's more than just a plan B because he's a good player as well on top of that. But he does offer you something that he can score goals at Brentford, score goals like he did against Luton as well. We have something different in Kai Havertz, and we missed him. And I tell you what, the fans that are saying missed Kai Havertz, what you're talking about is Kai Havertz, are embarrassing themselves. They're embarrassing and they're exposing themselves because they don't understand what he's brought to us in the last couple of months. The reason why he won Player of the Month for November, the reason why he carried on his scoring into December, the reason why he's been in the team and back and established his position. And he gets into those positions that a centre forward gets into. And I disagree vehemently with AFC Cape Town, who said this on the phone-in show last night, that again, Havertz is not a striker. Sure, not a problem. He's not a striker. But factually, what you're incorrect about is the fact that he gets into the positions of a centre forward when he scores his goals that we have seen this season. The goal he scored at Brentford, he's in the position of a centre forward. The goal he scored at Luton, he's in the position of a centre forward. The goals that he is scoring in positions, the one he scored against Sevilla, is the positions he's getting into that a centre forward gets into. He gets into those areas that a centre forward gets into in a position in a game where you are trying to desperately get a goal by getting the ball into the box, and he adds something different to that area. And we missed him. Facts. Period. We missed him yesterday. And those that think we didn't, those that think we didn't miss Havertz clearly have not been watching us this season. I've just not been watching. I've just not understood what Kai Havertz brings to this team, has not understood what he's done in previous games, and are too stubborn and proud to change their view and hold their hands up. It is as simple and as factual as that. Now, we have obviously the transfer window coming up very soon, and the transfer window is important to our season. And I will be disappointed if we don't sign any players. I don't expect us to do a lot of damage at all in the market. I don't expect us to do big things because financially we can't. Financially, we are not in a situation to, classic, yes. If you disagree with someone, you call them deluded. That's how it works. See you later. But when it comes to the window, Arsenal need to find a solution. Now, how we're going to do that, I think, has to come from obviously sales. I think we need to be proactive in trying to find buyers. I know it's not always possible, and I preach that it's not always possible, but we have to try and find buyers for Reece Nelson, and perhaps for Eddie Nketiah. I know that we've seen reports, Alan Nixon reported the other day, that Arsenal don't see a way for Eddie Nketiah to leave the club. I think that this is, for me, the wrong thing for both the player and the club. I think Eddie Nketiah will benefit far more from being at another club where he can start every single week, because let's be honest, he's never going to start over Gabriel Jesus. No matter what we think of Gabriel Jesus, he's never going to start above him. And that means his role, Eddie Nketiah, in the team is to come off the bench. And in terms of effectiveness from the bench, he is one of the poorest strikers in the league for that fact. For me, he's one of the better strikers in the league for starts, but he doesn't start. And that is a huge problem for Eddie Nketiah at Arsenal. And so if you're not going to start the player who's best when he starts, it's probably best we find an option that is happy to rotate. You look at Liverpool, they've got Nunez and Jota and Diaz and Salah and Gakpo. And besides Salah, the other four are all rotational. Diaz sometimes starts, Gakpo sometimes starts, Nunez sometimes starts, Jota sometimes starts. But they can all score when they start, and they can all score when they come off the bench, and have shown that on numerous occasions. And Arsenal don't have that at the moment. We don't have the firepower. It's not a massive, it's not me blasting Eddie Nketiah or abusing Eddie Nketiah like some fans definitely do. It is me saying just very calmly that his best work is done when he starts games. And while Gabby Jesus is here, he is not going to start games. And so, therefore, he needs to find an environment for me that emphasizes the best of his abilities. And that will come if he moves to a club where he starts regularly. And that's just not happening here. You know, whether I think it, whether Arteta thinks it, it's not. And so, also, you've got Darwin Nunez. Sorry, you've got Reece Nelson in a situation where he again he's good for some moments, like the Bournemouth game last season, the Nottingham Forest game, but when you compare it to the other title challengers' depth in those wide areas, the difference is night and day. Diogo Jota and Nelson, Jeremy Doku and Nelson, and I've had my criticisms of Doku, but my goodness me, like the difference is huge. It's massive. Now, I don't expect that to all be solved in January. And for those that expect us to, or those that are going to be critical of the club if we don't spend 100 million, what I say to that is you're asking for a reality that doesn't exist. The sustainability rules mean that we are facing restrictions of what we can spend. It's just we need to find a way of working it. And, hopefully we get some offers for our forwards. Hopefully we get some offers for Nelson. Hopefully we get some offers for Nketiah. And we can't be stubborn to turn those down. That's where I will be critical, is if we learn that Arsenal have had offers for Nelson and Zinchenko and we've decided against those offers, unless they're obviously insulting, we need to be asking some questions at that point. But until that point comes, it is very difficult for us to do some business in January. I really hope that we do. But the expectations, the noises, the rumors, the whispers, what I certainly have heard is that optimism around the club in terms of transfers, it's not there. It's not expected. And I see comments like this, which again I think is lazy, saying Kroenke out. I blame the Kroenkes for this fact. No, that's just a detachment from the reality of understanding what's happened at this club. Arsenal have spent huge amounts of money to overhaul a squad that has been, in my opinion, in previous times, by the likes of Raul Sanyehi, by the end of Arsene Wenger's era, by Unai Emery's tenure at the club as well, and some of the people that were at the club during that period, mainly Raul Sanyehi, we've had to spend huge amounts that have been backed by our owners to invest massive amounts of money to change this club, to put it into a position where it can compete for a title. And that has cost huge amounts of money. Whilst we have not necessarily been able to sell as well as we have wanted to, but we've not been able to. And I still haven't been able to get an answer from anyone that can tell me what Edu should have done better and how. It's been a long time. Still not been given an answer by anyone that is critical of Edu's performances in the market from a selling perspective to tell me what we should have done better. What we are expecting in January is hopefully a miracle. And that miracle will only be coming from what we do in regarding sales. And we've got to hope that we can sell. And if an opportunity does come to sell, that we take that opportunity and then reinvest smartly. So let's wait and see, as I always say. But we're going to move to part 2 now and your questions right after this. Okay. I am potentially open, and I did a phone-in show last night, but I'm potentially open to up it again. But I'm mainly opening it up to, and if you're interested in coming on the show, to tell me if you've been listening to me waffle on for these last 25 minutes, because I have seen people disagree with me in the chat box, and I am so welcome to hearing the opposite point of view. So people that have jumped in and said, no, Tom, you're wrong on this, you're wrong on that, drop a message into the chat box. Hopefully I'll see it. If you want to come on the show, I'll send you the link. Absolutely no problem at all. But we're going to take some of your questions. Before I do that, though, I want to say massive thank you to everybody that's bought tickets for our live event. We sold out yesterday. Believe it or not, during that game, we actually managed to sell out the live event. So I can't wait to see so many of you. 22nd of February at the Old Queen's Head on the Essex Road. I will be releasing some details about our lineup. I may keep some as a bit of a surprise. I think that'd be quite cool, but I will leave some to the imagination, and I will let you know some of our guests that will be on the day. But I think it'd be quite nice to have a bit of a surprise as to who some of the guests will be. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But yes, thank you to everyone that's bought tickets. I really appreciate it. Pokemon Go Speller says, no, the money we spend in the summer and in the winter comes from what the club earns. The Kroenke hasn't put a single pound into this club, and we use our revenue to buy players. It's entirely incorrect, untrue, and you don't understand how a football club is run by a total ownership. Any money the club spend is their money. They have bought the club. When you say they have not spent a single penny, go and do some research about how much they invested to buy the club. That's the money they invest into the club. Any money the club has is their money. Any money at all whatsoever. For those that are asking if they want to jump on the show, I specifically want to hear from people that disagree with what I've been saying. That's what I'm most curious about. I'm always curious to find out where I am wrong about this. So let me know what it is you disagree with. I'll put a message to the chat box and we'll try and sort it out. Daniel says we should sign Van Heck from Brighton as a proper Saliba rotation. Unsustainable to play Saliba this regularly when we had a major back injury less than a year ago. Daniel, I think that the concept of signing another defender is absolutely spot on and we should be doing that. Van Hecker, I'm not so sure. I think he's been doing well for Brighton, but is he accessible? I feel like he's going to be very expensive from Brighton. It's not the best team to try and buy a player from, is it? So that's going to be tough. Benji says, Tom, I think the players are playing with no familiarity. They don't know where they're going to be and so can't move the ball quickly. Gabriel Martinelli can't make the right decisions. I think that's a form thing. I don't think that's a coaching thing. The familiarity thing, I don't really get because they've been playing together for a very long time. The only missing link is Xhaka. And if that loss of Xhaka is so clear that it would affect this game, then how have we been so effective at winning so many points so far this season? And prior to this game, we're top of the table. So again, tricky one. Chadwin says, do you think the lineup for last night was incorrect? The only change I would have made is Jorginho for in the midfield with Declan Rice, just to give us a bit more foundation in the team. That's what I probably would have done, is brought Jorginho into that side. I mean, Jorginho obviously didn't come off the bench during that game. He was on the bench. That would have been the only change I would have made. I said that during my during my preview show. I said I would have started Jorginho and Rice together in the midfield just to give us a bit more foundation and probably offer Zinchenko a bit more protection. I'd certainly be starting those two at Fulham at the weekend. Well, I guess not, because we got Havertz back, so I'd be starting Havertz. So we have a different option in the front line. Stephen says the front three don't link up, simply not good enough. They scored more Premier League goals than we've ever scored with 88 last season. It can't be the problem. This is what I don't get and what people I think aren't explaining to me. This team scored more Premier League goals last season than we have ever scored before in the Premier League. So saying the front three aren't good enough can't be true. It can't be true because we know that them scoring more goals in the league than the Invincibles scored clearly shows you what we're capable of doing. So why is it not working this time around? That's what I'm waiting for an answer for, because I'm struggling to try and work that one out. Joe says, I think it's time Arteta looks at the academy like Nwaneri. If we are to sell Nketiah, no point in signing a stopgap striker that blocks an Osimhen / Tony in the summer. I agree the concept. I don't think there's any point in signing a stopgap. I don't agree with that. We need to sign somebody that changes things. Stephen says, stop living in the... Stephen, please come on the show. I beg for people like yourself to come on the show to tell me where I'm wrong, because often what you leave is comments like this, which don't do or mean or say anything. Stop living in the past. It was last season, mate. 88 goals. 88 Premier League goals, more than the Invincibles. Why aren't we doing that this season? What is the explanation? Why is that not happening again this year? I'm still yet for someone. It's not living in the past. It's last season. What a melon. Gooner Lad says maybe they're just out of form. Martinelli is definitely out of form. He is. Maybe is it as simple as that? Are we saying that they're out of form? But at the same time, 10 goals between the front three up until this point. I don't really get that. I don't really get how we've gone from 88 to 10 at the halfway point for our front three. And I know that the 88 was scored by more than just the front three, but you know what I mean. Boss says it's because we are too predictable. Every team knows how to play against us. We play boring football. Do we play boring football? Is it why is it boring? I wasn't bored when we battered Brighton. I wasn't bored when we battered Wolves. I wasn't bored when we battered Burnley. I wasn't bored even in the Newcastle game that we lost. We played some really good stuff. I wasn't bored when we battered Sevilla. I wasn't bored when we went away to Sevilla and won. I wasn't bored in the Man City game necessarily, even though it was more of a rugged display, that one. I wasn't bored when we beat Bournemouth 4-0, who have been a very good side this season. I wasn't bored when we battered PSV. I wasn't bored when we battered Manchester United and we were only vulnerable on the counter. I wasn't bored when we went to Crystal Palace and won necessarily. I wasn't bored when we opened the season against Forest. We aren't boring. Yes, we want to walk the ball in the back of the net sometimes, but that's not being boring. We have the capacity to play some really good stuff and have shown that this season. Have scored plenty of goals still across the team and have scored big scorelines in many games this season. But why is it the front three isn't working? Why is it? Archangel says, I think they're tired. Arteta never rotates and usually plays the same 11 when available. The area that we haven't necessarily lacked the ability to rotate is that front line. Smith Rowe, I guess, has been injured. Yes, Fabio Vieira, we've lost. So I guess there is an argument that we've lost some key players. Jesus has also been out. Is injuries again the reason? Is that the reason that we aren't able to rotate? Is that the reason why we aren't as good as what we were last season? Is losing Partey when we didn't really lose him as much as we did? We had Partey at the start of last season for quite a lot of it. Is that a really big part of this? Is losing that figure in the team? Is it Xhaka? Is it his absence that we don't get? Pokemon Ghostbusters says, remember the Kroenkes are worth 14 billion. Yes, but again, you just don't understand how it works. There are sustainability rules, which means we can't invest unless we sell. Again, do the research. Like, it's all well and good throwing in these things like get the Kroenkes out, they're not spending. If you don't understand why they're not, and you're just blindly throwing in comments that make no sense based upon the actual context, it falls on deaf ears. Do the research. Nathan says, hello, Tom. Don't you think we lack spontaneity in many occasions and that it could affect the quality of chances we create? Perhaps. But Jesus' dummy to Martinelli was a great bit of spontaneous thinking, which led to a chance Martinelli should score. The ball from Odegaard that we've seen numerous times into the box are full of imagination at times. I would like to see them played sooner, with a little bit more gambling in the final part of that game, particularly when we're not against the Kosh, when we're peppering the opponent. I want to see more risk taken. But maybe we just lacked the tools last night. We invested in Havertz in the summer to add something different, and he's certainly something of a plan B for us, hence why he has scored. There is no evidence to suggest that he's not a plan B because he's scored plenty of plan B goals this season already. We didn't have him, and that was key. Chris says we need Watkins, not Tony. With how poor Martinelli has been, again, Watkins never going to happen, is it? If you go to Aston Villa, we'd like Tony. Sorry, obsessed. Sorry, Aston Villa. We'd like Watkins. Okay, 100 million because he's just signed a brand new deal. Yeah, we don't have 100 million. How about 50 million over 4 years? No, see you later. It's not happening, is it? It's not happening because that's what we can do. We can't sign a £100 million striker if they're even worth that in January. Like we can't. We can't. Ian says games are decided in both boxes. Unfortunately, finishing of our forwards is to do better. Also, they seem to lack instinct to finish, which is weird. And also, sometimes we are overplaying our last ball. And I think this is probably Ian. We don't necessarily always agree, but I think I agree with you here. Yesterday was about both boxes. Yesterday was about West Ham taking their chances in their box, Arsenal taking our chances in their box, us not defending well enough in our box, West Ham defending very, very well in their box. How much of this is just West Ham being very, very good yesterday? They defended probably better than I've seen any team defend in the Premier League this season, and they took the two chances that came to them. And of course, there was some fortune about the first goal, which I don't want to focus on because I don't want to be accused of making up excuses because there's so many more reasons behind that. I shouldn't see anyone in the comment section being like, you made up excuses because we have gone over this a hell of a lot. We weren't good enough. We didn't finish our dinner. It is, for me, I think that is the key thing. On yesterday, we didn't finish our chances and they finished theirs and they defended very, very well. And look, there's a problem if we go to Fulham and the same thing happens again and we're not trying things differently to change it. I hope we go to Fulham and absolutely batter the Wolves down. But I look at that Brighton performance that we had that was so good. Like, we were so good against Brighton. That was one of the best performances of the season. And the only reason I think that that was different to what we saw yesterday is because West Ham got that early goal and they could just do differently to what Brighton did. Brighton were going to attack us because they wanted to try and win the game. And they nearly did with that Pascal Gross goal, getting that miss that could have gotten them back into the game, you know? But even in the game against Brighton that we played so well, we still lacked, you know, cutting edge and finishing. We still lacked that clinical composure that would have perhaps changed things for us. But yeah, it was as soon as we conceded, our best play in yesterday's game came before West Ham scored. I think we can probably agree that. Our best play yesterday came before West Ham scored. And it was as soon as they scored that they were able to sit in and close up the spaces that would usually be there at a 0-0 scoreline. And that's where we're lacking. And I think where Arteta needs to face a couple of questions about, do you know how to win games when the team is sitting in and are holding a lead and have no interest really in getting forwards other than releasing 2 or 3 players max on a counter? Do we have enough? And the answer to that question is Kai Havertz has been brought in to change that. He gives us something different. And so that's why when we were struggling to try and break down that Brentford defence in the last 10 minutes of that game, it was Havertz that scored. When Luton decided to sit in on their lead, at 3-2 up, and we were trying to find a way to break Luton down when they were sitting in, it was Kai Havertz that scored. And we've missed that. We've missed him in the answer yesterday. So there's too much evidence to suggest that isn't the case. And so, yes, Arteta did, and the club did try to do something for those situations where we are a goal down. But we didn't have that player yesterday. We didn't have that solution yesterday. And sadly, we don't have the rest of the depth in the team to be able to cope with those situations clearly. And we didn't then take the chances that we got yesterday. Amira says, remember when we were so effective playing 2 at the back with our attacking triangles on each side? I feel like Arteta once went for defensive security and has affected the attacking. There's the word, fluidity. I think that word gets overused way too much. I think there was loads of fluidity yesterday. It just didn't have the end. There was no end about our fluidity. There was lots of passing and slick movement and little chances being created, but there was no finishing touch. I don't think we lacked fluidity yesterday. I talked about this on the show. I think we lacked the finishing touch, the final pass. That's what we lacked. There was loads of movement, loads of people, little intricate passing. It was too fluid maybe at times, and we just didn't have that player in the box that could finish the chances that we needed to finish. And that's ultimately what cost us again on the day. John says, Tom, who would you be happy to sell in January and how much do you think it would generate? I think Nelson and Ketia and Ramsdale are the players that you look to. I think, whether or not we want Ramsdale to go is a different question. That's a whole different debate. The reality is that Raya is our starting goalkeeper. The reality is that Raya is going to be our keeper going forwards. Sell Ramsdale in January, sell Nketiah, sell Nelson, get the money in, reuse it. That for me is what I would do. That is what I would do. It's really easy, and it's not FIFA. It's if it was FIFA, it'd be easy, it'd be great. But it's really hard to not to look at the window and go, there's such an opportunity here for Arsenal. There is such an opportunity here for Arsenal. And if we don't take this, if we don't use this opportunity, then I fear where we end up finishing, because I think that we lack the depth and because we've had bad luck with injuries once again. But we know that happens, and so we have to try and plan for that, and we have to try and tackle this window and use it to the best of our ability. So there you go. Gooner Lad says, would you buy Solanke, Tom? It depends on the price. If Bournemouth say 80 million quid, then no, because we can't. So we can't. It's not a case of would you. It's a case of, can you? If we can buy Solanke, I'm coming around to the idea, but it's a case of can. I'd prefer Solanke to Tony. I think Solanke is showing more, but I don't think it's going to happen. So it's just for me and a little bit of a. There's a problem with those, isn't it? And it's the case of, like, if we can't get Tony, we can't get Solanke, we can't get Osimhen yet, who do you go for? And I think you go and try and find a younger striker. I think you try and find a younger player that offers you something, that we don't have. There's a clinical finisher that gives you these great opportunities. And, who came back from injury, and I wax lyrical about this guy. um, in the summer. But again, I don't think we're going to be able to get him in January, and that's Patrick Schick. Patrick Schick has been injured this season, but he's come back. He's scored a hat trick before the winter break for Bayer Leverkusen. They've been using Boniface up top. I talked about him in the summer. I really think that if there was an opportunity, if you told me that we can drop 50 million on Patrick Schick, I think I probably would get Patrick Schick through the door. And I think, as Ian points out, or another wide player. And I think maybe adding another wide player, a versatile forward to give us some speed. I want to see some speed. So in that Aston Villa game and the Liverpool game in particular, we really lacked somebody with that pace in behind. If Neto's there, great. Ghost Speller says, if we give pressure to the club, we ain't coming nowhere, Tom. You seem relaxed. I mean, I'll give you another chance to retype that sentence because that made no sense. John says, is this the first season Solanke has hit form and would it be a big risk? Well, I'll put it this way. Solanke's just outscored Didier Drogba only outscored Solanke, I think, twice more than he currently is right now. That's where we're at. And also, just remember, for those that saying, is this the first season Solanke has hit form? Just remember that Tony's only had one good season in the Premier League. That's it. He had 20 goals last season. 6 of those were penalties. He scored 7 goals without penalties the season before that. 7, which is nearly half of what Solanke has this season. Just remember that. So the whole first season thing that Solanke's doing well, and I'm not saying, John, that you want Tony, but I'm just using that for context, So before people turn around and say, well, Solanke's only having one good season, don't sign him now. Well, you're kind of doing that if you want Tony, because he's only had one really good season in the Premier League as well. Sirius says, how have we had both bad luck with injuries compared to other Prem sides? We've probably been one of the luckiest and can play our first choice back 5 and front 3. Well, that's not true, is it, Sirius? Because we missed Jesus for a third of last season and for a portion of this season. Martinelli and Trossard have also been out for a big part of this season. We've lost Saka against Manchester City and still won. Odegaard was missing because of a concussion and a hip injury throughout this season. We've lost Smith Rowe for the majority of this season. We lost Fabio Vieira now for a fair few months. We've lost Thomas Partey for pretty much the whole of this season. Timber for the whole of this season so far. I'm sure I'm forgetting some others. So to ask the question, how have we had bad luck with injuries? I hope that gives you the answer that you're looking for, because our luck with injuries has been horrific. Absolutely horrific. CJ Dan says, we don't need a wide player. That's where Jesus should be. We need a striker. It's like we've reached the point City did where Jesus is a winger and Zinni is not good enough. And I think that's a fair point. I think there is a comparison to maybe City reaching the maximum. They may be that the ceiling with Jesus and Zinchenko is indeed a team that can't beat City, which would make sense because City are the team that sold them. Getting Jesus and Zinchenko turned us into a side that could compete at the top. And that's why both of them started the majority of games of last and this season has coincided with our first genuine title challenges for the first time in a decade plus. So that makes complete sense that maybe the ceiling with Jesus and Zinni is just not quite the title. And that means that we need to go into the market and address that. And the irony is that we started to do that last summer with Yuri and Timber, who started at left back in the first game of the season and sadly has been injured. So it's not that the club haven't started to try and address that issue, because they have. They have tried to address that issue because they went out and signed the player that is sadly now out for the majority of this season. It is now about that centre forward. And who that centre forward is, A, I don't think it's going to happen in January, and B, it's going to happen in the summer. And I don't yet know who that is. I see people ask me all the time, well, who would you sign at striker? Well, I've given you a name. I'd probably go for Patrick Schick. But I at the moment, don't see any striker happening in January. The only forward I see happening in January is maybe a rapid, wide, versatile player. That's what I think that we could potentially see in January. But again, it's going to be very difficult, and I think we would have to sell. But if you sold Nketiah for £30+ million, which I think we should expect from Eddie Nketiah, is £30+ million. Some people say 40. I think I even saw reports saying Arsenal want 40. But I think if you would get offered 35, take it and run, and use that money and invest it into another centre forward, is what I would do. So yeah, there you go. Avanas says Sesko could be available, but 42 million is too much as well. 42 million pounds for a good centre forward is certainly worth investing in. The thing with Sesko, and I like Sesko, I've talked about Sesko a lot, but the problem with Sesko at the moment is that he's not playing enough. He's not starting enough games. He's currently Leipzig's second choice centre forward. He's not starting games. A lot of people talk about him, as I've talked about him. But at the moment, they've got two players in Openda, who for me, if you can go and get Openda, great. You're not going to be able to do that, but that's who I'd rather get. 11 goals in 16 Bundesliga games this season for Openda. I'd love to see Openda come into Arsenal. I think it'd be a great option for us. Don't see it happening because it's going to be too expensive, and I don't think we have that. Sesko gets talked about because he's a name. He's a name, but in all honesty, I don't think Benjamin Sesko is going to be the different. He's not going to change things dramatically. I don't really know why Sesko gets thrown in the same kind of space of conversation as Boniface and Jimenez. He does because of the age, but if we're talking about the establishment in a starting 11, Sesko is behind those two. Boniface has started plenty of games, started and scored plenty of goals. Jimenez has started plenty of games, final, scored plenty of goals. It's different. And I think that, if you look to somebody else, and again, I'm going to say his name one more time in Patrick Schick, like you got a player who's a good age in 27 that is scoring goals season after season as a record. Tony, I always look at 28, turning 29, just that slight stretch too far for the money that he would cost. Whereas I think that Schick would be significantly less of a cost than Tony would, and you'd get a player that gives you all of what Tony does, and I think a little bit more as well. Lee says, Tom, do you think the departure of Mislintat was an error? Absolutely not. He's just been sacked from Ajax, and look at where they are, Lee. Like, absolutely. Losing Mislintat and losing Raul Sanyehi were two of the best things that ever happened to Arsenal Football Club. Losing those two were two of the best things that ever happened to us. Edu comes in, who's just won, by the way, the Best Director Award at the Golden Boy Awards. He's come in and helped us to change the entire landscape of how Arsenal do business. The entire landscape of how Arsenal do business and how we construct a team has changed under Edu. And people want to continuously batter the guy. I still would be more than happy to have entire debates about Edu. But we've gone out and beaten Man City to Declan Rice. Who would have ever thought and put Arsenal down as doing that? We've built a squad of a young team that has turned itself from a side that was declining into a side that has arrested itself and has turned itself into title challengers under his and Arteta's and the Kroenkes' studioship. Is that the word? Custodianship, I suppose. Maybe the right way. An exercise. So, Tom, so what would you do? I've kind of talked about it. I said in January, be ruthless, sell Nketiah, sell Nelson, sell Ramsdale, get the money in, use that money, invest in players that are going to change things for us. Really, stewardship. Thank you, Paul. That's what I would do. I don't know if it's possible though, and that's my expectation of managing that expectation. I don't know if what I would do is possible, but unlike others, I'm conscious to that. So that is where I'm at. Chris says, Tom, with your logic, I don't know why you're shouting, with Gabby and Zinni, why not have the same logic about Arteta? I'm assuming what you're saying there is that me saying that maybe Zinchenko and Jesus can take us as far as they have done is you saying that maybe Arteta has taken as far as he has done. And the answer to that is obviously no, because all we have done under Arteta is move in one direction, which is forwards. The changeability of what Arteta is doing is significant. And we all know that last night, Arteta wasn't the problem. It's the fact that we couldn't finish our dinner that was the problem. So, no, very, very different. Very different indeed. Ghostbiller says, Cedric also bought Lokonga, Tavares, Cedric, the other players who play in Italy. I mean, you don't even know Pablo Mari, that is. Yes, also, it's a whole team thing, by the way. And you just defined 20, 24, 25 million pounds, if that. About 25 to 30 million pounds of investment. So what you've done there is you've heard what I've said about Edu, who signed Rice and Erdegaard and Trossard and Gabriel and Tomiyasu and Zinchenko and Jesus and Havertz and obviously Timber, who sadly we haven't been able to use, and Ramsdale and Raya on loan. You've heard me say all of that, and you've gone, Yeah, but what about that 30 million quid we spent on Tavares and Lukaku? What about that? Oh, terrible. Can you see how silly that is? Pretty silly. Yeah, people aren't perfect. Sometimes signings don't work out. You're not always going to get them. I mean, look at Manchester City with Mateus Nunes. Look at them with Calvin Phillips. Not always they work out. Is that me saying Man City are bad at buying players? I mean, well, depending on the alleged breaches. But no, they clearly have a great eye for talent. Look at Julian Alvarez. Look at signings like that. So it's just frustrating. And Daryl says Tom's sniping the chat. Look, I think I'm entitled, Daryl, to have my view and to clap back at times at certain comments which I think aren't accurate. People say that I don't give people the right of an opinion. I do. I give you my honest view of it, and I explain why I think it's wrong. I'm not going to tell you you're this abusive term, this abusive term, this abusive term. I think I might call you a melon. I think that's as far as I might go. But when it comes to I get very frustrated by the fact that people say, Tom, you don't let other people have their opinion. I absolutely do. I hear your opinion out. I give you my thoughts on why I think that it's wrong. Just because I don't accept a different point of view because I've explained why it's wrong doesn't mean I'm not accepting that other people are entitled to have that opinion. You're entitled to think what you want. I'm also entitled to tell you why I think that you're wrong. I'm also entitled to change my mind when I want to change my mind and when someone else puts me into a position where I think I should change my mind. I changed my mind on Havertz. I thought it was a risk. I thought it was a massive risk at the start of the season. I thought Arteta's going to die on this sort of Havertz. I don't see how it's going to work. I'm concerned about it. I just can't see it yet. I've seen it now. I hold my hands up about Havertz. Turns out it was a really, really important signing in the summer, and we missed him last night. And if we'd have had him last night, maybe we would have won that game because we would have been creating chances for the process that we went through signing him, which was to give us something different, which we really lacked last night. We lacked something different. We had that player, and we bought that player, and we acted in the market, and Edu and Arteta acted in the market to do that. And as I've said at the start of the show, and I've had no one take up the offer, if you think I'm wrong about anything, you can come on here and tell me. I had no one in the chat box take up that. We had so many people on the show last night. Fantastic phone-in show. Please go back and watch it if you can. If you haven't done so already, go back and watch the phone-in show. No one in there by Isowa disagreed about things we were really talking about. And there was no one that really, and even in the case of Isowa, and I think perhaps one other disagreed. But the points that were raised were, I think, in my opinion, respectfully, were countered pretty effectively. So, you're all welcome to come on the show and tell me where I'm wrong. And I'll listen to you and I'll ask you questions and you're happy to ask me questions. But so far, no one seems to take up those offers. So I'm pretty entitled to continue thinking the way that I think about this until I'm told otherwise, effectively. Chris, thank you so much for the kind donation. I get sick of people pointing to Cedric and Marie. They were needed at the time. They were never going to be long-term solutions. They were better than what we had and served a purpose. Come on, people. It's a really good point, and one that I didn't actually raise when talking about that. And it is frustrating, isn't it? Like, as I listed, you think of all the signs that Arsenal have made, the success we've had with Rice. What a unbelievable deal that Arsenal have done. And we can spend £105 million, do fantastical things in the market we never thought, beat Manchester City to one of their primary targets, and someone goes, but what about Cedric? Can you see how silly that is? Like, it is crazy. It is crazy. John says, you can think one thing one day and something different the following day. And that's absolutely fine. And opinions are there for debate. It's very lazy to just snipe. And Tom provides us with all this, with this platform. Thanks, John. That's very kind of you indeed. Cass says, let's go to look, as a fan base, we are all angry after a loss, especially in the manner and the way that it happened. But please calm down. As a fan myself, I don't expect Arsenal to win every game. And the game's gone and we can move on. I'm always in favour of saying to people that they should move on from things, but I don't think you should forget. I think this is why it's important to have life outside of football. I've certainly learned that from when my job has become football, that you need to have things outside of that. I was sitting there last game, frustrated, annoyed. But if that was me watching Arsenal 3, 4, 5 years ago, I think that I would have been more angry. But I've certainly learned to temper that anger. And that's really been beneficial for my own mental health. Really has been very beneficial. Trevor says, our build-up is so slow and allows teams to get behind the ball. Liverpool, Man City don't play this slow, tipsy-tape football. Our build-up is slow at times. But Trevor, do you think there's a fair point to say that it wasn't slow in the first, in the first 10 to 12 minutes of the game, it wasn't slow, that actually we were quite quick and we created a few chances in those first 10 to 12 minutes before Souček scored. And it was as soon as they scored that the game completely flipped. And then it became slow because they were sitting in and just, parking the bus. And without Havertz, we don't have the option, So I think that probably changes things a bit. Archangel says some people have just realised that we're not going to win the title. That's why they're angry. Arsenal can win the league. There's absolutely no possible situation whereby Arsenal cannot categorically win the league. By the way, I've just put a link to StreamYard in the chat. You will need to turn your camera on and you'll need to be over the age of 18, of course, to join our phone-in show. So I can't get you on unless you have a camera, a quiet place to record, and you're over the age of 18. It's just a child protection thing. So Fuad says, hey, Tom, I mentioned on last night's atmosphere, it seemed quite dead. I get the scoreline didn't help. We had we actually had a listener on the phone-in show yesterday mentioned the atmosphere. It was disappointing to see so many fans leave. I talked about that a bit, so I'm not going to go into it again. But yeah, please do go into that a little bit more. Let me just send a message quickly into our private chat. I know this is really enthralling. Listening for you. Let's go. Oh, goodness me. So, right, I don't really understand this. You're also, when you have your camera on, you're also going to have to show your face, mate. Like, you can't have a mask on. If you could see what I'm seeing at the bottom of my screen, yeah, you can't have a mask, mate. That's no, that's just not happening. Arthur says, still lots of football to be played. Lawns, I should know, laid the blueprint of how to beat us this season. For me, we didn't take enough risks. Sometimes you need a bit of chaos as well. Okay, perfect. Go Spellers joining us. Go Speller, how are you, mate? You good, Joel?
Yeah, I'm good. And you?
Oh, hold on. I need to take my headphones off because you're coming through. Why did you put a mask on?
No, I just wanted to say, I've been an Arsenal fan for a long time, I'm one of the young ones, yes, you see. But I think that we should progress in a way that we need to look at some parts of how we play. For example, when we play, I see a lot of triangles, especially around the box of Saka, Ben White, and Ødegaard. I think that the way we play is too one-dimensional. I didn't know if you realized through the game that we played a lot of triangles, And when we played a lot of triangles, of course, we get a lot of passes. That's what the triangles are made for, to get around the box, to get around the field a lot. I live in Sweden, for example. Football here is a lot of passing around, getting possession, and seeing how the play goes. But we also need something. If we get all these chances, we also need to strike them in such kind of way. That's why I said we should look at Arteta, because he plays this type of game. Why? Because he likes to get around the box and get how do you say it? He likes to play possession type of ball. But if you don't have a plan or different plans of playing this kind of type of way, then you will not strike the ball in the net.
You don't think that other plan comes from when when Brentford defended deep, when Luton took their lead and defended deep, that we had Kai Havertz that we brought in to change things and scored two really important goals?
I've changed my mind on Kai Havertz too.
Right.
By the way, I've changed my mind. Of course, Kai Havertz would have helped. A lot of YouTubers and a lot of people and the Arsenal fans said that Kai Havertz would help because he's a tall player. But I only think that if we need to rely on somebody, I think that the most important thing that we get somebody like maybe someone new as a Kai Havertz, maybe someone who can play in front of Kai Havertz, maybe someone who can play with Kai Havertz.
Who?
Like I think Tony, or maybe
So you'd spend 100 million on
or,
Tony?
or me. Yes, I would.
Yeah, well, that's how much he costs. So would you spend 100 million on him?
Yes, I would. And I would
Okay.
also spend 100 million on the player that plays in Sporting. You know, the Swedish player.
Gyökeres.
Yeah, Gyökeres.
Yeah,
Yes,
I butchered the
he's
pronunciation, but yeah.
yeah, he's also another one. And
Right, but
Sesko.
we don't have 100 million. That's the problem.
No, that was what I said before
Yeah,
about Kroenke.
do you understand what I was saying? Like we factually cannot drop 100 million pounds on a player. No matter how rich our owners are, we can't do that because we would then breach the financial sustainability rules.
But yeah, I know. But isn't it true that the owners ourselves can put in around 30 million pounds to support and invest in a player or in the club?
Say it again. Sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
Isn't it true that our owner, the Kroenkes, can put around 30 million pounds into the club to invest? Is that not true?
What's the source of that information?
No, they said it in I forgot their name, but they said it in the news report that our owners can put, because of our the situation we are in right now, that we need to sell a player to buy a player.
Yeah.
But we, the club, we invest. The fans that go to the stadiums and go and watch the games, that invest money to put that money is used to buy the players.
Well, it's used for a lot of things, but what I'm saying to you is that it doesn't matter if we had a sellout crowd at the Emirates every single game this season. It doesn't matter if every one of those fans buys a new shirt for the season. Based upon financial sustainability rules, we cannot invest 100 million pounds because we would go into a situation where we begin to breach those rules that stops us from spending.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That we cannot do it because our own club is investing the money into the transfers to the transfers. But that's why I'm saying that the Kroenkes can put from their own pocket in money. Do you understand what I mean?
No, because that money it counts. Do you know how the accounting works for a year-on-year situation? What we spend goes on like so. Imagine you got two sides. You have expenditure and you have revenue. Two sides of it, right? So you're saying that Arsenal can put money into the club to spend, right? So that's nothing to do with revenue. We add another, we do what we did when COVID was happening. We take out a loan and then we invest the money into the club, buy players with that. So let's say the Kroenkes put 100 million pounds into the club, right? And buy Tony. That's what you're suggesting that you want them to do. You want them to put 100 million pounds into the club and buy Tony. Is that effectively what you're saying?
No, but it's not possible for the Kroenkes to put 100 million because they said,
I know that. Yes, that's what I'm saying. That.
But I'm only saying that. Okay, let's say that the reports have been now lately that we can only put ourselves, the club, around 30 million to 40 million for a player.
I haven't seen that personally, and I certainly don't know that that's true. Just for the
record. But they said we could only buy one player. Isn't that true?
I said that it's certainly my understanding that Arsenal are looking at multiple players, but realistically, depending on what they cost, Arsenal aren't going to be able to invest loads of money in this window.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know the figure specifically, but it's nowhere near 100 million. That's for sure.
No. So that's what I said. I said in the beginning that we as Arsenal can only invest into the players around 30 to 40 million. That's why I said if the Kroenkes put around 30 million themselves into the club, that could then mean that we pay to the clubs in installments, don't we?
It's amortized across the length of at least 5 years.
Yeah, it's for the 5 years. So let's just say we pay 70 million for Tony, but we don't really pay 70 million. We pay in front maybe 30 million, Then
Yeah.
maybe the next 4 months you get maybe 10 million, and then maybe in the next year you get maybe, let's just say 50 million. Then it will
Right.
continue until the price is fulfilled. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. That the
No, I
Kroenke
understand what you're saying.
mm,
Just two things. A, he's not 70 million, he's 100 million, and that's the Athletics report. So very, very accurate in terms of information. Secondly, if it's as simple as you say, why haven't they done that?
because they think it will become it's risky. They say they made me think it's risky to do that. It
Well, they
takes a
just spent
lot of
100
risk.
million on Rice. They clearly are open to spend, and 65
No,
million on
but
Havertz. They
but
spent,
remember that money came from the club. That didn't come from the owner.
what do you mean? It's that they own the club.
Of
Any
course,
money the club spend is their money.
no, but I mean from their own pocket.
Yeah.
It came
Do
from
you know how
Arsenal's
much of
pocket,
their own pocket they have spent to buy the club?
around 3 billion.
Right. So if you're saying they haven't put any of money of their own pocket and then said they've put 3 billion of their own money to buy the club, they have put 3 billion in. Of course, this is going to, I don't have the exact figures. I know that they spent 550 million in 2018 to buy out the rest of it. But if we're hypothetically saying it was 3 billion in total to buy the club, surely that's 3 billion of their own money, is it not?
Yes, but Tom, remember, in a business, you need to buy it first. First of all, you need to buy it, then invest in it. You have
Yeah,
the
but
money to buy it, and then you have the money to invest. You
when
understand
you
what I mean?
own something, so let's take a shop, for example,
Our
you
our
own that shop.
investments, our investments are Adidas, Emirates, Rwanda, and
Yeah, sponsorship.
the sponsorships. That's also how we get. And our investments is also when the fans come to the stadium, buys a ticket,
Yeah,
goes to the
that's all
shops.
revenue.
Yeah, that's all revenue, and that's
Yeah,
also how our club breeds the money we get. That's also the money that we use to buy players. So that I'm
yeah.
saying that our club, our owners can use that money that they get from their own pocket, some of it, not all of it,
But
to buy players in the
I'm
January.
telling you that they can't
But how?
because of financial sustainability rules.
But those financial state is sorry, my English is pretty bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. You're doing really well. Keep going, mate.
Financial sustainability rules weren't the Kroenkes put them on themselves? Or you mean because of course
Because
when you
they
buy
invested,
something,
ironically.
yeah, they invested, but didn't the Kroenkes put those rules upon themselves? Because they make their rules when they buy their club.
No, the profit and sustainability rules are implemented by the footballing authorities. They have nothing to do with
Do you mean by
like
the FA?
it's more UEFA and the Premier League. I think it's more in the case of the profit and sustainability rules, it's the Premier League. So the Premier League put those restrictions in place based upon the wider context of the footballing laws across other nations as well. So when you're saying that you don't understand why they can't put 30 million pounds of their own money into the club, it's because that it's not like going on to Football Manager or whatever and activating a financial takeover and getting 30 million quid. It doesn't work that way. Arsenal are already on not a watch list, if you like, but they are certainly on the edge of that of kind of leaning away from the profit and sustainability rule threshold. Hence why we signed Raya on loan instead of buying him, because we couldn't afford to buy him outright in that summer because we haven't made enough money from a revenue perspective and for a player sales perspective to enable us to invest more. And so if your suggestion is that, well, why can't Kroenke just drop 30 million more? It's because it doesn't work that way, because you invest 30 million pounds. It doesn't matter where that money comes from. As soon as you spend that money, it shows up on your expenditure that you've spent. So it's just, I know it's finances and it's complicated stuff, but I'm just telling you, you can't do that. Like it can't be done. Did that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
No, by the way, I really appreciate you jumping on the show first, and I hope the chat box show you the respect that you deserve for having the front to come on the show. But it's just in short, because I've got a couple of other people that want to call in as well. In short, you can't just put your hand in your pocket, throw 30 million down, and there be no consequences. You know, Manchester City are currently facing 115 alleged breaches of financial rules. And a lot of that, if you look and do the research into it, there's a lot of things to do with sponsorship, about how the money was invested, et cetera, et cetera. We can't just put our hand into our pocket, drop 30 million from the owners, because they've already dropped billions into buying a club that they now own outright, which means all of the money that Arsenal makes is their money. Any money we get from player sales is their money, because they own the club. It's if you own a shop, any money your shop makes is yours because you own the shop. So it's that same analogy. So yeah, we can't just spend 30 million
But
quid
can I
out
say
of our
one
own
thing?
pocket.
One thing
Of
before
course you can. Final thing,
yeah,
and then we'll move on.
final thing. But sometimes we need to look at this one. We haven't won a title for almost 20 years. Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Would
20 years.
yeah, it hurts. For me as an Arsenal fan, being
Mm.
an Arsenal fan for almost 8 years, seeing us fail and fail and fail every single season.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice? I know that it will become problematic in the future, but if we
I
think,
know what you're going to say.
if we think in the now, for example, and they
Right.
put around 30 million pounds into the club,
Yeah. Right.
and we win something great, maybe the
Yeah.
Champions League,
Yeah.
the Premier League, that will be in our history books forever.
Right.
As an Arsenal fan,
Okay.
as a young Arsenal fan, I would be so proud of my club.
Would you? Okay, so you talk. So I'm really glad you used the words. I'd be really proud of my club. So imagine yourself in the shoes of a Manchester City fan right now. You've won the treble. You've won Premier League titles. You've won FA Cups. You've won the Champions League. You're now under investigation for 115 alleged breaches. Hypothetically, and I'm being really legally careful here, hypothetically, if they are to be found guilty, one of the punishments that they could face is A, a points deduction,
the charges.
B, they could see those titles stripped away from them as well. If you're in that situation and hypothetically that happens, would you still feel proud of your club after having those titles stripped away from you and being deducted points that could place you in threat of relegation or even guarantee relegation? Would you still be proud of your club that they won those titles?
No, but the thing is that we are not Manchester City. That's the thing.
But you're suggesting we go beyond the rules, is what you're saying.
But I'm not suggesting that we should go beyond the rules like Manchester City did. The thing is, we already have the players. There is only, as Arteta said, he only needs 4 to 5 players more. He needs 1 defender, 2 midfielders, and he said an attacker. Maybe a striker, a right winger for Saka, a backup. So I think right now, if we did that investment to buy just 1 player, those rules, of course, it will go against what we're going to do. But by the end of the season, you never know, you might have a Premier League by your side. Or you never know, you might have a Champions League by your side.
In the future, we might get that stripped from us because we broke the rules.
I think we'll get a points deduction if that happens
today. Well, now we're just getting into semantics and back and forths about whether or not it would happen. But I appreciate where you're coming from. And secondly, I appreciate you jumping on the show this morning. But yeah, I hope you understand why I can't get to the same place that you're in right now. But Ghost Speller, I really do appreciate you jumping on. Thanks, mate. I'll speak to you soon. There we go. We're going to try and get a couple more on. Chris, I know you're waiting for it to come on. Just check the private chat, mate. I've sent you a couple of messages in there that I'd need you to acknowledge. Let's get Dyer on as well. Dyer, how you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
I'm good, Tom. How are you?
Thanks for being so patient. First of all, really appreciate that. I'm only going to be around for 15 or so minutes because I can feel I can feel the wife's glare through the door. Like, why is he going on an hour and 15 minutes? So tell me.
I was watching yesterday's game and it was shocking to know that from last season to this season, and I called this before the start of the season, that we will not replicate what we did last season.
Yeah.
You know, it's impossible to do so. It's impossible to replicate, you know, in terms of the goals that the dynamics of this team have changed. If you look at it, we had an advanced 8 in Granit Xhaka. We don't have that anymore. You've got Declan Rice, who plays more like a Patrick Vieira going forward with the ball as a number 60. You have Kai Havertz, who effectively he's a number 10, he's not number 8. So it's a different
Yeah,
dynamics
he's
in
not an
terms
8,
of
I'd
the
agree with you.
exactly. So it's a different dynamics in the way that the team are playing, which is why you see Odegaard is dropping a bit more deeper in receiving the ball from the defenders and trying to connect with Ben White and Saka on the right hand side. Martinelli, I think that there is either a confidence drop or knowing that he's got Zini behind, that he has to do more work than he needs to. If you look at when Tomiyasu was playing on the left hand side, there was more confidence in Martinelli, but he has to do the work because Zini is limited in terms of his defensive deficiencies. We all know this. He's great going forward, but in his defensive ability, that needs a lot of work. What my fear is that this manager is stubborn in keeping Eddie Nketiah. Unfortunately, it has to be called out. He is stubborn. Eddie, as good as he is, he'll never be Arsenal's first choice striker over Jesus. Not in a million years, not in the next lifetime. But he wants to keep him. He also wants to keep Reece Nelson. I understand that you want to protect the players' value in terms of the money, in terms of how much they're worth.
Yeah.
But if we want to win the title this season, he needs to sell players. I'd say Ramsdale. If Newcastle need a goalkeeper because
Pope
is injured, sell him to them. Because he's not getting back into this team. Let's be honest.
No, he's not,
no. For everyone who says, "Oh, but he needs to fight till the summer," are you lot having a laugh? He's not going to be. Rare's our number one keeper. We wanted Rare before we got Ramsdale. Unfortunately, didn't pan out. We got Ramsdale. As good as Ramsdale was last season, yes, you can still see the mistakes. You can see that he has lost his confidence. You saw it in the West Ham game. You know what I'm saying? He has lost his confidence. I would rather have Kai Havertz on the bench, keep David Raya, you know, and get that money injection to get in, to bring in players. Now, I heard you talking about Tony. Would he be the solution? No. A long-term solution, no, but he would give us that something different to Jesus. Now, I don't know if we could. I don't know if we could do either a loan with an option to buy, like we did with David Raya, if that's something that they could propose to say, okay, that is one solution. Patrick Schick, he was scoring goals for fun last season. This season, he's had his injury. Is he the same
he has
player
come
that
back
he
straight
was?
away and scored 3 in 1. To be fair.
Well, there are options out there, but my fear is the way that Arteta's got this team playing at the present moment. Jesus is dropping deep, similar to how Lacazette was doing last season. Will he allow that striker to play the way that the striker wants to play, or is he going to say, no, you're going to have to drop deep, get the ball, receive it to the wingers on either side? That is my fear in terms of if we did get a striker. But will it also upset the dynamics the way that we're playing at the present moment? That's another thing that you have to consider going forward. That
because I think the centre forward has to have some Jesus characteristics for us to work. Yeah,
and that is the fear in terms of if we brought in an Osimhen in the summer, how is that going to change the dynamics? Will Osimhen want to play that he wants to play, or Arteta said, no, you have to play the same way that Jesus is playing, drop deep, link up with the wingers on the either side and try to create chances, tear defenders left and right, and the wingers could score. But I was calling for Pedro Neto, and when I heard in the summer that we inquired about him, I nearly lost my rag because I'm thinking, we need another winger who is more dynamic than Saka, because what I saw from Saka yesterday, I counted 28 times he did the same thing over and over.
Yeah. He's too far wide.
Yeah, he is. And the thing is that I even said this in a couple of spaces yesterday because I was on Twitter. When Martinelli and Saka get double teamed, they do not have a clue what to do, and that's down to the manager. The manager needs to find another way for these guys to play because it is just coming enormous. Just like the wingers are too far out wide. Martinelli's got his head down running, doesn't know what to do when he gets to the byline if he's got 2 defenders. We saw that against Liverpool. You saw Konate and Trent double teaming. He did not know what to do. Same with Saka yesterday. I have to give it to West Ham. They knew exactly what they did. Get that early goal, put 10 men behind the ball, defended for their lives, and we still couldn't break down the chances. So I would say to Arsenal fans, yes, temper your expectations, because if this manager is not going to sell Eddie, which he won't sell Ramsdale, I don't think this is going to be a second consecutive season where we won't win the league. I think it'll be Liverpool. I think eventually City will get their run. Now that KDB's back, That's all I'm saying. And I said it, as soon as KDB comes back, the architect for Man City going to be firing on all cylinders. And again, you have to then question Arteta and why are you being sentiment with these players that you have? He's too sentiment. And if we had a different type of manager, we wouldn't be in this situation with having Reece Nelson, Cedric, Eddie Nketiah and all that. We wouldn't have them in the team. He would have said, nope, you're gone. You know what I'm saying? Your time's done.
Like, you know where I disagree with that is that the people asking or saying things like about the fact that we renewed Nelson, we renewed Nketiah, like, and you mentioned protecting value, etc. It is also worth pointing out that there is no transfer fee attached to a renewal of a contract, and so Arsenal are at the brink of the profit and sustainability threshold by doing the business that they have done, which does not include, obviously, the likes of Nketiah and Nelson. If we hadn't have renewed those players, Nelson would have left for free in the summer. Nketiah would have also left for free. And there would have been no money attached to those. If you sell a Haylender, if you sell a Youth Academy graduate, it counts as the best financial reward on a balance sheet that a club can get, because there is no transfer fee involved when you get those players in. So whilst I absolutely agree with you in the sense of I think it's time to move those players on and replace them with somebody better, I think we're absolutely aligned in that thing. Where I disagree with you is the argument that another manager would have got rid of them or brought somebody else in. The reason why maybe another manager would have got rid of them and brought them in would not have necessarily been the answer, is because deals for the likes of Rice and deals for the likes of Havertz or deals for the likes of Timber and Raya may not have been able to therefore happen, because we would have spent that money that we had saved for them by renewing those players in spending them on different options to Nketiah and Nelson. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is a fair point. You know, that is a fair point. And what I would say is that this club, for the longest, they're terrible at selling. You know, I remember when we first started, when the transfer window opened, everyone was about counters. We're going to get this much for this player, this much for this player.
Like buy, blah, 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 sell, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly. That was getting so much, and look what we did. And we put ourselves in a situation because we can't spend the player. Yes, you know, Declan Rice, money well spent. Timber, he looks like he could displace Zinni, because I think he's limited to his game, and I think Timber is a upgrade on Zinchenko playing at left back. Kai Havertz, even though I was critical of him, he has turned my head to say, you know, he is starting to find his groove, he's starting to find his rhythm. Whether he would have been influential in the game yesterday, we would never know. Thomas Partey again, who I've been heavily critical that I would sell him in the summer, because he is a liability, regardless of the fact that he's come back from injury. He's a liability. If we didn't have Declan Rice, we wouldn't still be second in the league currently at the present moment, or drop to third. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not getting my expectations up. If we need a defender, yes. If we need a midfielder, yes. I also think, yes, Pedro Neto, if he's out injured or not, you'll have to make the sacrifices, either sell Nelson to get a Neto or sell Ramsdale. I think Ramsdale, out of all the players that you mentioned, Eddie, Nelson and Ramsdale will be the highest one that will get the money for it. If you have to sell him to Newcastle, Chelsea, do it, because you're not getting back into the squad. You know, Ramsdale, you've lived the dream of playing for Arsenal, but Chelsea, your time is, you know what I'm saying? Your time has come. Your time has come at Arsenal, and it's a shame the way he's been treated, but that's another conversation. But I just think now that I don't have no confidence going into the Fulham game, because what I saw yesterday was it was disgusting. You know, I've seen Arsenal performances over the years, and what I saw yesterday, something has to change. Either Martinelli's going to have to get dropped so that he can, you know, come on, play Trossard on wing. Either have Havertz, if Thomas Partey is fit, you know, bring him on, put him on the bench, you know. But we due to Fulham at home, and if we don't buck up our ideas, especially the front three, and start scoring, we're not going to be winning this league. And, I'm going to be brutally honest, like Arsenal fans are thinking, yeah, we're going to win the league. Not with that performance.
No, I don't think anyone can sit there and say we're going to win the league. Like,
you'll be
that was never my expectation at the start of the season. It was Man City are the favourites, and they should win it.
But there are some people who are still saying that yes, Arsenal can win the league. I'm like,
I think can, but will is a very different thing.
Yeah, can is for me, in my opinion, it's a very tall order in regards to winning the league with this current team, the way that they're playing. From what we did last season to this season, yeah, we're not firing on cylinders. I don't know if we have to go back to the drawing board or something has to happen, but really and truly, we're going through a situation where Martinelli's not having a run of form, Saka is not having he's doing what he's doing, but not like last season. And Jesus, we would have thought this season, from the being injured from last season, that he'd have a better season, and it's gone worse. And I think, as people said in the comments, getting a striker would be ideal and play Jesus and giving Saka that break. I think we can all see now why Man City decided to sell Jesus, why he was playing on the wing at City. So
it's a stepping stone. Like I never thought that Gabi Jesus and Zinchenko were the be-all and end-all for Arsenal in regards to them progressing to title challenges. I thought they were the next step, and I think they've proven that because we obviously have become title challengers with those two in the team. But the evidence to say that they are the end goal, the end game for Arsenal is categorically not there, because Man City stand as the team we bought them from as the example of no, to go to the next levels of winning leagues, Champions Leagues, trebles, etc. You have to go to the next level, and we weren't there yet. The jump we made was massive, and and I'm so impressed with the jump that we made. It's now about going to that next level. But the fact is that I think Arsenal are already working towards that. As you mentioned, they signed Jurrien Timber last summer. I think the expectation is that he would be the next evolution of our fullback position on either flank, and I think particularly on the left-hand side, he's got potential for that. And then obviously the next summer is about that centre forward, and can we sign that player that's going to take us forwards? Dyer, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to jump to one more caller, but I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks, bro. Massive stuff. Really appreciate Dyer for jumping on, giving plenty of love in the chat box and the comment section. We're going to finish the show with Advertus. Join us now. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
I'm doing okay, Tom. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad, mate. No, but first of all, thank you for being so patient. I can't promise you're going to be on for a long time because we're going to have to wrap things up soon. But tell me what your thoughts are.
First of all, Tom, I just want to say thank you for the level of professionalism just every day. I know sometimes I come on a little bit late because of the time difference. I'm in Houston, Texas. So a little bit sometimes catches when it's maybe the second half or a little before the first half of the show. But thank you very much for everything.
Oh, thanks, man. That's really kind of you.
I mean, for yesterday game, I'm so devastated. I'm so hurt to see us play the way we play and lose the game where West End doing little or nothing in the school, 2 goals in the kind of fashion it was conceded. It's painful. But at the end of the day, it's the game. It's the EPL unpredictable things happen. We see people been losing game that they didn't even supposed to lose. So when I go undefeated, but if your team play that best football and things that not go the way you wanted to go, for some of us who play the game, we just have to accept it and move on and prepare for the next game. But my point is that the reason why I think the front three is not firing for me is because maybe a lot of teams are probably strategizing how we play. So the coach needs to sometimes intertwine the player, try to move Saka left, try to move Martinelli right, or probably move Jesus forward right. Because we are not kicking goal. We got a lot of parts. If you look at yesterday's stats, it was so alarming that we couldn't even score 1 goal. Because we are not kicking a lot of in the 6-yard box in the 18. Every ball we want to make sure we work in the goal, and it won't work with most of the team because they are just standing there. If you're going to take shot from anywhere, you can probably deflect on anybody and we can score. But you want to work in the goal, it's just hard to be done. And I'm a little bit confused why Arteta putting an academy player and the Larry on the bench, and you're not even trying to use them even of like 5 or 10 minutes in the game when all our players have been probably man mark. Some of these kids can probably make the impossible to happen because from somewhere they can create something like if you watch most of the games, most of the goals that he scores is always in the 6-yard box. It's somewhere around that 80, somewhere roaming around there. So sometimes
You know what it isn't
blend
though,
it.
Advertis? It's the goals that we don't score that are like that, ironically, have come from crosses into the box for Havertz, who we didn't have last night, and obviously Declan Rice's goal against Luton as well. That was another cross into a back post position. And obviously maybe some long shots that we've seen scored this season, which, to be fair, even in that sense, we've not scored too many of them this year either. I think that the issue we're finding is that if a team gets an early goal like we saw yesterday and we don't take the lead, we struggle because the teams sit back, they compact themselves, and they make it very, very difficult for us to beat them. Now, in the summer, we address that problem by bringing in Kai Havertz as being a different option for us to try and tackle that problem. The problem was yesterday, obviously, we didn't have that player. And then when we got the chances that we got, we weren't clinical enough. And we all know that the way to solve that is to have a player that is more clinical as your centre forward. The issue with that is that that's A, not going to be available in January, and B, even finding that in the summer is going to be a really tall order, and it's going to be very expensive as well. And you've got to get the right player and make the right investment, which I don't, as people know for the record, think that Tony, for instance, is. Osimhen would be great, and I think absolutely if his release clause is £110 million, go and activate that. I think, because I don't know who else you're going to get, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like you said, it's going to be very expensive, especially during this January transfer window. But like I said the last time on the show, I know most of the players right now, the daily finisher what we have right now, they are all expensive. But the last time on the show, remember I told you, we can go South America. And our history are proving that most of the players we got from South America, especially the Brazilian, they are always easy to settle in. We can go South America. There's players like Palimo for Eleva Menero. You got players in Argentina. You can go there and find some of the first 3 or 4 top scorers in those leagues and see if they can fit into their style of play. At the end of the day, you just need somebody to stand around that 18-yard box to just finish chances. All of 2 chances, 3 chances, at least they'll put one in the back of the net. Well, I know Jesus is not a type of striker because Jesus work himself over time. So the time you expect him to be in the back, he's not there. And sometimes you can blame him. And I know he should be kidding. Like he had 2 possible chances yesterday. I think those 2 held on one of them. He should have buried one of them. But he's the player. That's the first instant where he went with it did not materialize. But we need to. He'd been doing a very good job going to South American League. He need to go back and check some of the league and see the top scorer in the league. And we'll get those players. You go there, you pay less than 3, 4, 5 million for them. And I think we can afford that with the FFF rules, and we can fit into type of player to bring it in our league or bring it on our team to do a better job. But we all finish. I've been saying from the beginning, I've been critical and a little bit skeptical that the team we have right now, it will probably take us to where we are, but to win the league will be a little bit difficult because we don't have that depth. We don't have that player to actually bring on like how West City has. And now City is on a bad form, but as soon as they click right away, have Kevin DeBon on, it's another different ball game for them going forward in the next stage of the league. I know we're having injury to key players, but at the end of the day, we still need that finisher to help us to get the goals because we're moving the ball from the big early stage. We're not very being fluid, but now we're creating chances over chances, and we're just not finishing. I don't know why. I just don't know.
The chances not being finished, I think, were the biggest reason why we didn't win yesterday was we simply didn't take our chances.
Yeah.
I don't point the finger at Arteta. I don't point the finger at Edu. I'm not pointing the finger at the fans, even though I don't think they were particularly great. But I'm not pointing the fingers at them. I'm not pointing the fingers at VAR, even though they made mistakes.
No.
Well. We didn't finish our chances, and that is the reason. Advertis, I'm going to have to shoot off the show. I'm really sorry to cut you off.
Okay, that's your turn. Thank you so much for everything.
Pleasure.
Have a good day. Okay.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate your time.
Okay, then.
Have a fantastic day. Massive thanks to Advertis there. Brilliant stuff. Please show him some love in the chat and in the comment section as well. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to so many fans all around the world. It always is, especially those that take the time to jump on. I don't necessarily always agree with what I'm saying, but hopefully we can appreciate that we've got so much to enjoy about Arsenal. But last night certainly highlighted the things that we haven't necessarily got in the same way to enjoy. Do drop a like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'm not saying that this is going to become a regularity of these 8 a.m. shows going on an hour and a half. It certainly won't be. And I want to do more phone-in shows in the future as well. So keep your eyes peeled for those. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe, stay well, and as always, up the Arsenal.